Wow, look really, really white. All right, I do think I got it up though. So let's see. Share screen. That puts me down there. That works. All right, I need to share this to get people on here. I need to get someone to check it out for me though. Let's see. I need to get this working, and I need to share it. I did not schedule this, but I'm gonna do it anyway. So if no one shows up, that'll be absolutely fine. Did have a lot of fun doing this last time though. For sort of online, it was a good time. Uh, need to get some people in here to tell me if this is working or not. If anyone is watching right now, can you let me know if you can hear me or not? Trying to share this, link it out. Oh wow, someone in our chat just pulled the 3-star Rukia. That's crazy. Thanks, homie. That's wild. Going over the. I need to. I'm trying to share this, get a link to get people on it. So it's going to take me just a second. Can you guys hear me? YouTube really is like, I don't want to speak badly on it because I want to YouTube to be like happy with me, but it's really not easy to stream off of YouTube. Like Twitch is so much easier. They really do make it way easier. Um Can you hear the music this time? I tried something different this time to be able to hear music. If you can't hear the music, it's really not a big deal. I do need to work on sharing this real quick though, so I won't be able to see what you say. As long as you can hear me, that's all that really matters. But I looked at some tips on how to get the music to show, and it's not showing, which is okay. I need to share this. No music. Okay, that's all right though. The Black Clover decks. Oh shit! I really wanted that with that. Let's see. I can still share this. Maybe copy it all together. Let's see. So I can copy this, copy text, V, and then also can share it from the stream. Share, copy. No music kind of sucks. I really don't know how to get the music working. Let's see. I have to make sure when I share this stuff to the other channels, like everyone's very specific about what things you put it in. Like for content creators, like one is like this is for your YouTube stuff. Another one's like this is for um this thing or that thing, which is absolutely fun. I just have to make sure I do a good job of like not trying to trigger anyone when I share these to get people in on it. Last time went really well though. This went pretty good last time. I did not schedule it this time though, so if it doesn't go as well as last time, then it's on me because I forgot to schedule it. So that's my own fault. I really can't believe that you guys cannot hear the music still. That's kind of wild. Here, let me turn it up and then tell me if you can do it. Because what I've been doing is playing it through this. It said that if you did this, it would work. That change anything? Still can't hear it? I turned it up. But if you guys can't hear the music, that's fine. I really don't understand what I'm supposed to do for it, to be completely honest. Mm, maybe games talk? I'm trying to figure out what to do for this one. Bum, bum, bum. I was trying to play a Black Clover music too. This soundtrack's fire. No music. That's okay. I don't think anyone's really going to show up for this stream because I forgot to schedule it. God, the Black Clover music's so good too. It's really sad that it won't play the music. Let me see if I can get some more people in here. Na na na. Think that's just about everything. All right, no music, which is lame. God, Black. If you guys have not listened to the Black Clover OST, it is. It really is just like so good. I love it. Couple of people in here. Nope, no music. God, Lee. I literally did everything that I saw on like the interwebs to try to get this working. It's because like for some reason my Streamlabs key thing is not working, so I can't do it straight from Streamlabs. Um, it's the YouTube thing is so silly how it doesn't want to work for me, but it's okay. I'm just trying to wait for a couple people to get in here and from YouTube Live, and then I'll start it. Because either way, I'm clipping this for video footage. So even if no one really shows up to give me input, that'll be absolutely okay. Mm. It really does just say though to like share your your PC audio, and it should do it, which is what I did. But that's whatever. That's okay. I just wish you guys could pretend that you're listening to the same OTS as me. Na 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 na. No, something about guarding my privacy. I gotta share this to Facebook and then we'll start. Like I said, I did not schedule this ahead of time, so if no one really shows up, that's okay. But I do need to stream this through YouTube and then make a video out of it. So that's what I'm gonna do. No, no. I'm gonna post it to the Facebook things. I am really excited for this set though. Like I said, it's out. We got a couple boxes. We didn't get to get a lot of things opened up this weekend, but this upcoming weekend we'll be able to. So we'll have a couple cases, so we'll be ready to go. It is only just now 6 o'clock too. Maybe I should have waited till 7. I think last time I did it like 8 o'clock, something like that. But I did schedule it, but that'll be okay. I'm still very mad and upset that you guys can't hear the audio. Hmm. Shared it there. Wait. What if sharing this one? Do this here. That one. Now I'm sharing the entire thing, which is good because I'm gonna have to be clicking back and forth between the two. I think that is really slow though. Whatever, it'll be okay. All right, this is the whole list. I'm gonna start this. We'll start the thing. Maybe a couple people join. Like I said, I'll use this to clip to make the videos later, anyways. But I do have to make my little time notes because that helps me out a lot. So let's say 11 minutes. No, my pen went out. It didn't go out. It was just dry. I left it open. These clickers are there for a reason, so you don't dry your pins out. Okay, I'm gonna go over all the decks. Last time, I just have this on here, um, so you guys just have an image to look at before I reveal the rankings on the decks. But what we're gonna do is I have all the decks on the list how I did last time, but there is one stat that we changed from last time, and I took the skill, star rating from the rankings, and I moved it down to like this extracurricular zone. Okay, so I'll go ahead and show this since the first one is going to just pop up like this. I didn't make like a cover for it. But the new thing for this star chart from the feedback I got from all of y'all is that the skill, like what it takes to like pilot the deck, the skill, how much like over a big tournament it drains you and stuff like that should not be considered in like a ranking for the deck. And I definitely totally agree. So going forward, I made a new line here. I had to change this chart a little bit. I still wanted to keep the skill star rating, but we're putting it down under the extracurriculars because I also had the fun level, right? So I do want to be able to talk about those two things, but just to not confuse anyone, we are doing these two now as extracurricular stats, and what we replace skill with is consistency. So consistency took over the skill spot because that is what most people in the community, when I was asking what should be like a stat. Everyone said, like speed, defense, offensive power, removal, utility, and the next highest thing that came up is consistency. So we will go from going forward on all these reviews for all these different decks. We are going to say consistency. And like I said, I'm learning along with you guys. I'm trying some new stuff. This is like a pretty cool thing that we can do together. But we have a new thing, and it is consistency. All right, but the first deck that we are going to go over is going to be the Black Bulls, the red color, and I do think that this is the best deck from the set. This deck is really, really strong. Um, Consistency in a game with limited resources busted. Yes, I do agree, Jared. Yes. That's why we see the most decks that usually have like the most raids or the most raids that are 4 or 5 energy. They always usually do the best because it really is just so much more consistent. And I think with the way the game is set up, being consistent in a resource deck game is really important. But for the red black bulls, this is the highest graded deck. That is why we're going over it first. I did give this deck. Let's see if I can root it in a little bit better for you guys. There we go. A 21.5 out of 25. I know it's a very specific rating, but we will get into it. So not quite as powerful as the Blue Sword Art Online deck, right? That was the highest one that I gave, and the other one I think that it was a 22. It was so pretty close. So about like we consider like a top tier deck, right? This is definitely the deck from this set that I do will believe will be the most consistent in tournament toppings. Like I said, the preference, I'm going to start this, and then I want everyone in the comments to let me know your thoughts while I go through this. Leave it in the chat. I'm gonna go straight through everything, give you guys all my thoughts, go through all the ratings. And while I'm going through it, I want to hear you guys, sound off in the chat and like tell me what you guys are thinking. And while I'm going through it, I'll try to, look over and see what everyone's saying, and then we can all kind of talk about it together too. But the final grade for the Red Black Bulls is a 21.5 out of 25, which is a really, really good score. I gave it a 4 out of 5 on speed. This deck is really, really consistent because it has a lot of really good, uh, you know, 4 energy raid targets with the Astas. You have 4 of those. And then the only 5 cost that you have is this other Asta, which is the main raid card that everyone's going to be trying to get because it pops a body, but it is low to the ground. You don't have to really go above the 5 energy mark. And with that being said, too, you have so many different raid targets. You have a lot of low body Astas that can really swing in for a lot of damage, which is what helps keep this deck to be really, really fast, right? So it is a very fast deck. It doesn't take a lot of setup to get going. And I do think that maybe 4 is pushing it a little bit, but I think that the deck is so consistent and it's so fast that if you start off slow against this deck, you're gonna have a bad time because it is really fast in what it does. There's plenty of Asta targets for you to raid on top of. You have multiple Asta raids. You have the knots, which are a good 4 drop, and the Yamis, which will help you out too. And none of those take a lot of resources to play. With that being said, the best stat that it got outside of the utility and removal is offense at a 4.5. We are using these gray stars now to show that it got half a star. I could not find a way to like evenly split these stars and make it look nice. So the gray star means they got half a star here. So 4.5 on the offense is really, really good. Like this is such a strong deck. Really powerful with the Astas, multiple, different raid targets coming in here, and it is really, really good. There's really not much more to say about the offense, right? Like if you can raid often enough, then you get to just be powerful. And the fact that like its removal is also like an offensive thing, right? Like they also gets to come down, pop a body that is 4K or less, which makes it where you can swing in. Say they had a double blocker that was going to keep you from going for game. Well, it's able to push through these boards that your opponent is able to put on, so it has a lot of offensive power, being able to swing in for game. Defense, I gave it a 4 out of 5 on the defense for some of these same reasons. Like it's so easy just to throw down a lot of 4K bodies in this deck and be able to block your opponent out with them. And the same thing as the removal. I can't talk about it enough. The removal on this Asta, the 4K or less, is because that's also a defensive thing. Because if your opponent puts out a body that you need to get rid of, you can respond defensively also by raiding this Asta in live. Because if they swing in and they hit this and you get to raid the Asta from life, now you're popping a body on their turn, which is even stronger, which is so, so good. It's just really, really strong. The not being able to boost you up to be able to block out some of those characters is really, really strong. The consistency is a 4 out of 5 of. I didn't put it at a 5 because I do think that the mechanic of being able to have to put these resources face down on the bottom of your characters does make the plays in the deck a little different, right? Because you have to have those face down cards to like get your value, and the knot is the main card that lets you do that. And if you don't see the knots, the consistency seems a little off, but it is just so consistent in being able to play these 4 drop and 5 drop 4K bodies that it is still very, very consistent. The removal and utility is what I gave it the biggest stat out of, and that is a 5 out of 5. I can't talk about the Asta enough because it is the main card, I think, from the entire set that is really going to, put you in a good spot. And it's just such a good card. Like it really is a busted card. The deck has a lot of ways to remove bodies. You have ways to boost your BP on your characters. You have ways to get rid of pesky blockers with impact and stuff like that. Like you have almost everything outside of bouncing something back to their hand. The deck is really, really, really good, and I think the utility and removal of the deck is what sets it apart, maybe from some other decks that do a lot of similar things, right? I think that the removal in this deck is a little bit better than what the Blue JJK has because popping the body is essentially worlds better than bouncing it back to the hand. I know that's not always the case when it comes, to cards that they want to have in their graveyard. But I do think that the Asta just provides so much for the deck, and it really is just a 5 cost Asta star of the show because once you see that card, the deck really does everything at once, and then everything else that's in the deck is enough to still just win games because it's so consistent and powerful. All of that adds up to give it 21.5 stars, which is an amazing grade for a deck that is for certain. And then I gave it 3 for skill because I don't think it takes a lot of skill to play the deck because you really kind of are just, doing normal Union Arena stuff. I don't think the deck is requiring you to really think outside of the box about some of your plays. I don't think the wording on any of the cards is absolutely like, unheard of for something that you would see in the game. And I do think there is a normal skill cap. I think that to be less than a 2 or 3, the deck would have to be like autopilot brain, and I don't think a lot of decks in Union Arena that are that way, right? I think most decks will just be a 3, and then other decks will be stuff outside of that. And I gave it 4 out of 5 stars for the fun level of the deck because I do think it is a fun deck to play. You get to play with Asta, a lot of your favorite Black Bull characters in the game, and I do think that that leads to it being, a pretty fun time for you to be able to, play with these cards and, have a good time doing it. That's for sure. Um, the keynotes, sorry, I came out of the full screen for some reason. Keynotes for the deck. I'll go through and talk about this real quick. Please let me know what you guys think about the ratings on the side. If you have any input on it, I would love to go over it together. But keynotes of this deck, it is a different playstyle, right? Because you are placing cards face down underneath your characters to get value, and you do have to manage that resource in a sense that your other cards will keep putting face down cards underneath your Astas. So that way, then your Astas can get their effects to, remove bodies or just stay rated and be really strong cards, which is really good. But it is a different play style, right? That's going to confuse people for the most part. I did look at the rulings, and you can look at your own face down cards. That's knowledgeable stuff for you. You don't have to show it to your opponent, but you can actually look at those cards face down. The deck is fast and consistent, which is what I talked through with the grading, as you can see here. Super fast, powerful, consistent deck. Asta Beatdown is viable with the 2 raids of the deck. Yes, you can just, this deck is, you know, it does what like a Renji Rush can do, but better because you can actually raid. But if you really need to just hard play down the Astas, you can also do that too. Um, because it's just so strong, and you have so many 4 and 5K bodies in the deck to do it. Um, One thing that is kind of outside of like the actual deck, but it is a card game, right? So some of these things need to be talked about. Some of these cards will be hard to get a hold of, right? A lot of people will be building this deck. So if you are someone that wants to build this deck, this 5 cost Asta is going to probably be the most expensive super rare in the set. I've been pretty good about predicting these kind of things or like, looking at the markets and looking at the trends. But in Union Arena, we definitely have like a best super rare card of the set. And that usually is like whatever super rare is played 4 of in the best deck from the set. And this Asta is definitely going to be that card. So if you're someone who's looking to build this deck, the price of the deck may be a little bit more above average than what we're used to in a lot of other Union Arena trading card game decks, right? But it still won't be crazy expensive because it is still Union Arena. That is the final notes and grading on the Black Bulls red version of the deck. I do think that this is the best deck in the set. It is a really powerful, fun deck to play. And I think a lot of people are you're gonna see this deck a lot. That is for sure. All right, going on to the next one. If no one has anything to say about this deck. All right, second deck on the list is the green Asta and Yuna 3 cost Rush Day. This deck is really, really, really cool, and it is really scary and fast, right? Like I said, I'm gonna go through the gradings. You guys let me know what y'all think about the gradings. You can see them all here. I'm gonna go through and give my reasoning out on them, and then we can touch up on what anyone else has to say about it. But this is the green 3 cost Asta and Unit Rush deck. I gave it 19.5 out of 25. Um, and this is really just based off of the main, stat of speed and offense in this game. I don't think that this deck is going to be like an amazing deck in like the meta or a lot of big, tournaments and stuff like that. because it is kind of, a high rolly, low to the ground, rush your opponent down with a lot of like low target raid cards and play cards from free off the top of your deck. I gave it a 5 stars out of 5 for speed because this deck is scary fast. You only need 3 energy to really ramp up and do a lot of your plays. You do have a double energy Julius here who lets you search for any character and add it to your hand, which makes the deck super fast because once you play this Julius on turn 2 or 3, now essentially your energy is set up for the whole game because you really only need to be at the 3 energy mark. The only time you need to be at the 4 is when you're actually playing your raid here, but you don't ever have to be at that 4 until you get ready to raid that you want to keep your other Unos in your hand, or keep them on the back line. And the only time that you're ever going to play the Uno is when you're already getting ready to raid him up. But it is a super fast deck because you have multiple raid targets that are 3 energy. You have ways to get people on the board from the top of your deck, get resources from the top of your deck. The deck is very, very, very fast. Now, it is a super fast deck with 5 stars out of 5, and it is a very offensive deck. I didn't give it a 5 stars for the offense because it is very fast, but I think speed and offense are two different things. Speed really just determines like what kind of range your deck is, how fast it can do it, and how quick it can do it. Where offense, I believe, is like your BP, how big your bodies get, how many big bodies you could put out there, and then this one only gets a 4 out of 5. I say only 4 because it doesn't push a lot of 4K bodies, right? Or anything over 4K. You really just sit at the 4K mark. You do have a couple other ways here to boost certain bodies, but your Asta, if you don't have a out, is only going to be 3,500. Now, I think if the Asta came out and it was a 4K that got 500 more BP, it would be absolutely insane, and the offense of the deck would be a 5 out of 5 for the stars. But a 4 out of 5 stars on the offense because it is an aggressive deck. It is aggro. You do have a lot of different ways to put these bodies on the board, but you do have a BP problem, being able to get over some of these big stats, and you don't have a lot of other instances outside of your Asta to provide you, impact. There's not a lot of double attack shenanigans or anything like that. You're really playing out bodies, and if your opponent, clears those bodies, you're kind of in a tough spot there. So 4 out of 5 on offense. The speed and offense of this deck are definitely the main parts of this deck, and I think that's why it gets such a high grade because outside of that, I think it doesn't do a lot of other things really, amazing. It's definitely like a get low to the ground, speed out your opponent. Deck. I do think the defense, I had it at a 3 stars out of 5, but then I bumped it up to 3.5 stars, mainly because I do think the fact that you're able to just, use your bodies if you really need to. Some of these low 3 energy drops, they can be decent blockers. Like if you're playing a 3,500 body for 3 energy, you can just wall out your opponent a lot of these other attacks just by those cards alone. And I think the fact that the deck is so offensive leads to it getting a little bit better stat on the defense because it doesn't have double block or anything like that. But a life triggers are a thing, and you're gonna get a lot of raid triggers in your life because you have 12 different raids in the deck that you can play, and you also have the great, green color trigger to play out some bodies as well. The defensive part comes up too with the Swallowtail letting you, trash the raid characters. So that does come up a little bit too. The consistency is a 3 because even though the speed of the deck is really low to the ground and fast, you have to see certain cards. And you have to, manage this mechanic of keeping a 3 cost at the top of your deck to really get all the value from all your cards. So the consistency is good in the sense that like it does a lot of those things, but it's not always like, amazing consistency because you do run so many different pieces, and it being a low to the ground big combo deck, it's not like crazy consistent. It's just consistent enough, and that's why it's 3 stars. I do think the removal and utility is a 4 out of 5, mainly because of the Swallowtail being able to draw you that card, that consistent raid, draw a card, trash their rated character is really, really, really good. Super strong for the deck. And the also lets you, when he is played, if you have the Asta, you get to, look at the top card of your deck, and then you either place that at the top or bottom. So it keeps the consistency, the removal, utility, everything, going with the flow. The definitely makes it a little bit better. And then you're just able to play bodies for free too. I think that that's utility. And the removal is mainly from you swinging. So there's not a lot of removal in the sense of like you're clearing your opponent's bodies, but you are pressing so many bodies on the board that you are removing them because your opponent's gonna have to block. And in most instances, they're gonna lose those bodies, right? And you're doing it fast. Like the removal is kind of tied to the speed because, like I said, you're getting online so fast and you're able to push so many swings that your opponent's gonna have to block. So that is part of your removal. And just like any deck, special trigger removals, things like that, but you're really doing it and getting a lot of utility and power from you just swinging in. Extracurriculars, I did put I'll touch on the fun. It is a very fun deck. If high roll with this, I say high roll, but like just get an amazing hand with this deck, you're going to have a lot of fun because you're going to be on turn 3 really popping off with just 3 energies, swinging in with like 4 little bodies, 3,500 bodies here and there, and just pushing pressure on your opponent. And like for your opponent too, like they have ways to play around this stuff, right? I do think that the grade of this deck probably says a lot more about the power of the deck than I actually think it is. I don't think it's the second best deck in the set, even though the grade I'm giving it from the system that I'm using says it's a 19.5. I don't think that that means it's the second best deck. I do think that a lot of the decks, the next 2 decks and this deck, all kind of sit in like a tier together below the red Black Bulls deck in a term of like level, right? And the skill is a 4 out of 5 because you do have to manage that 3 cost. Like it has to be 3 costs on the top of your deck, and it can't be anything in between. There is a Asta that is considered a 3 cost when it's in your deck, which helps out a lot. But you do have to manage, keeping a 3 cost at the top of your deck to really get a ton of value out of your Astas being able to get the impact and your being able to play the characters out for free, right? The keynotes. Let's see. This deck is scary fast, scary fast. Uh, it's so fast. It's very, very low to the ground and fast. But that being said, if you are able to, drop a 4K body against it, now you could probably block out some of the speed it has. But it is scary fast because it's on turn 3 or 4, putting out 3 to 4, 3,500 plus BP swings on you. Keynote, keeping up with the 3 costs on top of the deck is exhausting. Like I said, on the skill part, you're gonna have to keep up with that. And you do have tools in the deck. The deck does give you all the tools you need to really keep stacking your deck and keeping it that way. Um, this deck is not going to be an easy deck to pick up. It's going to require a lot of games from you putting into the deck to know just how many 3 cost characters you run in the deck, right? Like keeping up with your 3 cost counts, knowing exactly what cards you run in your deck are going to be a big part of this deck succeeding well, which is why I think that like it won't be played as much because it is going to be kind of like a combo oriented deck. And I think a lot of those, if they're not like, super powerful, don't get played like to, extreme levels. But this deck does have an issue with consistency and getting over big bodies. I did give it a 3 out of 5 stars of consistency, but I think where it's so fast and it's so low to the ground, that helped it keep the 3 stars. But you do need to see a lot of combo pieces to really get going. And you do have an issue if they play a 5K body. That 5K body is probably staying on the board all game, and you're not going to have a lot of means to really get over that because you don't have a ton of ways to boost your characters. But it does look to be a really fun, cool deck, and it did get the second highest grading for me in this set at 19.5, which is nothing to scoff at. Let's see what you guys are saying in the chat. What's up, new follower here and new to UA? Thanks for the comment. Welcome to Union Arena, Gregory. This game is a lot of fun, man. There's a lot of good decks in this game, and there's so many different IPs we're getting. Union Arena is in a good spot, and you are definitely coming to the right game. And the community is great. The community is amazing. I've only recently started this channel, and I've been getting a lot of support for community. It's been fun. But in any of the Discord servers, I'll try to link them at the end of this video, Gregory, and you will have some kind of access to go to those Discord servers. Jared, early pressure is pretty nice. The best defense is a good offense. That's what I'm saying exactly too, right? I think that that's why this deck, I had to give it that extra point 0.5 in the defense because you really are just throwing so many bodies on the board, which helps give you defense against your opponent. So, yes, offense is the best defense, especially in this game where attackers always win, right? You swing in with your 35, and if they have to block two of them with their 5Ks, then, you're still winning because you got to keep your 35. They had to block you. So, it is definitely a big part of the game. That is going to be the rundown on the 3 cost Asta and Unit Rush deck. That is what I'm terming it anyways. Just right now, my timestamps here. So I cannot make myself any smaller on YouTube down there, guys. So I see that now that I'm taking up the but that's okay. Rehydrate a little bit here. These jugs are awesome, by the way. This is kind of off topic, but if you have an issue drinking water, you can buy these off of Amazon. Not that I'm trying to advertise for such a big company, but you fill this thing up. That's all you need for the whole day, and it makes my life a lot easier. Okay, going to the third deck on the list. Actually, let's back out a little bit just so we can go over for everyone real quick the 2 decks that we have gone over so far, and we can kind of see, a little recap. So, Red Black Bulls got a 21.5 out of 25 stars, which is really, really good. The green 3 cost Asta Rush and Rush deck, 19.5 out of 25 for its rating. Going on to the third deck, and what is going to be my favorite deck of the entire set is going to be the Three Ladies in Red event value deck. That is a very specific naming. I am terming it the Three Ladies of Red. You guys use the same name. Let's get it going on because I think it's really cool. And it is an event value deck. It is going to revolve around playing a lot of events, to get some good value in late game. Like I said, let me know what you guys think about all the ratings that I'm doing in the comments. I'm going to go all the way through them first, and then I will check on the comments so we can all talk about it together. I did give this deck an 18.5 out of 25 stars. I am getting pretty handing out these 0.5s there, but I really want to try to be as specific as I can to give you guys my feedback on these decks. But this deck is a 3 out of 5. It gets 3 out of 5 stars for speed. I really thought it would be a little bit faster. This deck is a consistent unit arena deck. You have a couple 4 drops. You have a 5 cost raid. It is a consistently speedy deck, but it's not anything crazy. You're never gonna get, these crazy plays where you just feel like you're rushing your opponent down because that's not the way this game works. Even if you do feel like you could do that with some of the 4K bodies, that's not really where this game or this deck thrives, right? It thrives around getting value later in the game the more events you play. So it is kind of a build up deck in the sense of like how a lot of green decks feel like, to be honest. But instead of like trying to get to like a high energy output, you're trying to get to, 5 energy, somewhere in the middle like that, and then get some event value. The offense for this deck, though, is a 4 out of 5. This is the best stat in the deck because you have this Noel, which is really, really, really strong. Like I said, you have multiple raids, so that does, go into speed and offense. And I think the offensive power of the deck is so good because once you go into these raids, your turns are going to be very, very impactful. With the Mimosa letting you reduce your AP cost of your events for free, and then or being able to get an event to get the Noel back. You're able to raid the Noel to get the impact and all these other things, which is really really strong because you're gonna have impact. Make your opponent not be able to block her with the little bodies, and then make them have to block with a big body if you are that strong in the game. I think the closing power of this deck is really really strong, and that's why the offense is a 4.5 stars out of 5. I think that the only thing that is missing, to be honest, and it would have made it nuts, is if this deck had like Snipe, like maybe Mimosa or Lolopechka gave Noel Snipe. That would put it at a 5 out of 5. But you have the 5K BP, and you have Impact, and you have multiple raids. So I think that that's what pushes it past that 4 stars for me. To have a consistent raid 5K Impact one is, I think, just so strong where like that already puts you at a 4 or 5 stars. And the reason I gave it that extra point 5 is because I do believe that the consistency of being able to play down your Lolo Pitchka 4K bodies and having multiple bodies that you can raid help push the offense of the deck just that little bit further. Now it's not, I think the only deck that'll ever be like 5 offense is, One Punch Man because he swings in one punch, but that is irrelevant to this conversation. All right, defense, 3 out of 5 stars. For defense, mainly because, like we were talking about earlier, being able to raid is a good defense. So being offensive minded is a really good way to be defense. I do think that, this deck has a couple instances of impact negate. Your Lolopechka, the big body, actually has impact negate. You can block with your 4Ks, which is really, really good. I do think that, the Lolopechka or the Noel not keeping that 1000 BP until the end of your opponent's turn does hurt a little bit. Uh, but in general, 3 out of 5, a deck has to be doing something really wrong on the defensive end for it to only get a 2 out of 5 and not just, the 3 out of 5. So you have to be doing something to really hurt your defense to get under 3 stars, right? I think as long as you have a 2 raids, normal 4K account of 12 in your deck, your defense could be a 4. The consistency is a 4 of. I do think that this deck is consistent for it being like a combo oriented build up deck because you do have so many Noel and Mimosa and Lolopechka names. You have a lot of searchers and a lot of cards that draw you cards. Let the Mimosa actually let you draw a card when you raider and stuff like that. So the consistency of getting your game plan off is pretty high, and that is why it is a 4 of. The removal in utility is a 4 of as well. You have a special that helps you remove. You do have multiple means of searching for your events or characters. You have multiple means of drawing cards, and already there alone, without getting into the keywords of impact, impact negate, all these things like that, you have a lot of utility. And the removal mainly comes from your opponent being forced to block the Noel once you have the 4 events in the sideline. Now you do have a special trigger as well, but the main way you're going to be really going through it is because Noel forces in the block, which is going to be your main removal. But outside of that, the deck doesn't have as much removal. So I think the utility is what really is giving it the 4 stars, not the removal, because the removal is lacking a little bit, but the deck has so much else going on for it. All right, extracurriculars. 5 stars for the fun level because it's my favorite deck, so I'm giving it 5 stars. I like decks like this. I do think that I'm going to enjoy this deck a little bit more than I do like the Esper Sisters, mainly because there is a little bit more room to mess up in the Esper Sisters, and that game plan doesn't feel as fun to do for some reason. Like, I think in the Esper Sisters deck compared to, this Three Ladies in Red deck, I think that you have a little more, like, it just feels more fun to me. I'll just say that. It just feels more fun. I don't have a lot ton of reason why. It could just be because I love Noelle and Mimosa, but I also do love the Esper Sisters. So I don't know. I gave that deck a 5 out of 5 too if I would have done it. And a 4 out of 5 for the skill, mainly because you do need to manage the amount of events you play, and they have to be your 2-cost events very specifically, and you do have multiple bodies that you want to manage to not lose, so that way you can then raid on your character. I see Jared left the comment, so snipe is too much, no oil, or they force you to block with bigger bodies. This is true, but that's what I was saying. If it did get sniped, the offense would be a 5 out of 5 because that'd be so strong. A 5K impact snipe, that's not Kurapika? Sign me up, for sure. All right, key notes to go over. If I haven't touched on it through the grading, like I said, that's all the star rating, 18.5 out of 25 for this deck. The keynotes, the deck is a lot of fun to play. You have these cute anime character girls you get to play with. They all come out and do really good things. Even the little Petchka being able to, let you search and do all this stuff. The Mimosa kind of, it just feels fun to play. It's a fun deck. And it's more consistent than you would initially think, right? This seems kind of like a combo build them up. You kind of have to be at 5 energy, but you have multiple 2Ks. It's more consistent than you would think. Initially, when you go to like think about a deck that does all this stuff, you're gonna do it pretty often, right? 5 energy plays at the right time feel kind of clunky, and yes, this is true because Noelle is a 5 cost, and there's only a couple double energy generators. I think in the list I only have 10, and a lot of those times you're putting those up because a couple one of them is your 3K, and she also gives you some value as an attacker. So trying to manage that 5 energy feels a little clunky sometimes because you really wanna go into the Mimosa and then the Noel. But the Noel does read really cool because it just says if you use an event this turn. So you can use an event and then raid into the Noel, and then now her impact 1000 BP is online. I think that that helps the deck out a lot. If she had not said that, it would have felt really, really clunky. But it does feel a little clunky sometimes when you're trying to be at that 5 energy and keep your energy consistent, which is what I think makes the deck feel a little more fair and a little harder. If Noelle was only 4 energy, I think that this would have been pushing for one of the best decks in this set. The deck has good deck thinning and searching. We went over that in the consistency part of the deck, and the payoff is worth it. Noelle is strong. You do feel really, really good once you're able to get this Noelle off because she's able to swing in, make your opponent lose their big bodies that they're trying to, beat you with, and it is a good payoff. And it is not a ton of payoff for the 5 energy. I have been speaking down on the 5 energy that it is such a detriment, but that's really not that bad. That is the final notes on the 3 ladies in red. If no one else has anything else to say about them in the comment, we're gonna move right along. All right, the next deck is going to be the Green Captain Toolbox, my second favorite deck to build from this set. This is definitely a toolbox deck through and through. You do have a big, payoff at the 7 energy deck, but it doesn't feel the same as Suzaku or Kurapika green build-up decks that play kind of similar to this. It is different in the sense that, the Mario Leona really wants to support the other characters you play on board, right? So those other characters are going to keep you into the game until you get into the Mario Leona, and then she will help boost them up to, help you win the game. That is kind of the aspect of it, right? All right. Once again, like I said, leave in the comments what you guys think about this deck. What do you think about the ratings? I'm going to go all the way through them, and then I'll touch up on what you guys say in the comments down to the side. If you agree or disagree with me or don't, I want to hear it. But I gave this deck an 18 out of 25 stars. Very, very solid deck. I think that from this grading, style that I'm doing with this, 5 or 25 stars, I think any deck that is over, a 15 or 16 is a solid deck. A deck would have to be really, really bad to get under this kind of like decent ratings, and it had to be insanely amazing to get a 25, which is why I do like this rating because I don't think that there's any deck in the game that I would give a 25 at the moment, to be completely honest. I gave this deck 3 out of 5 stars. This was probably the one thing on this rating that I felt like it could, have a little bit more. But I think that since you have to run a 7 energy character, the speed of the deck can't be any faster than the 3. One of the arguments I was going to try to make with you guys about why maybe the speed could be higher is because you can really push the state of the game with some of these captains, right? The Charlotte has step. She's really good. She's a double energy. If you have Yami out, she's 4K. So she can be someone who's actively out there defending you and being aggressive while also coming back later in the game to help you bring out that Mario Leona. Your Fogolian, if you're able to boost him, he does get that impact. And then the Yami is just such a strong character coming down too, but he is a 5 energy. So at the most that you can do is 4 energy hard play drops, and that really hurts the speed of the deck. So just a 3 out of 5, a normal speed deck, considering that it is, a build 'em up deck. It really doesn't feel too slow, but it's not a fast deck by any means. The offensive power of this deck is definitely a 4 out of 5, right? I was going to give this a 0.5 on the offense, but I do think missing out on a double attacker is something that this deck, a double blocker, double attacker, stuff like that would have helped this deck out a lot. But you do have Leona, who has damage 2 and impact 1 and is 5k, right? So I think that alone pushes it up to a 4. I was really trying to bring up the other captains to maybe push it to a 4.5, which I think all things considered maybe could be, right? I probably should have gave it a point 0.5 on the offense, but it's just not fast enough. The speed and the offense are kind of tied together, and I think not being able to do this until, 5, 6, 7 energy plays makes it where the offense isn't quite there. But you do have the payoff of Leona, and she does boost your other bodies. So when she comes down, they don't have just one big body to worry about. They have another body to worry about. So the deck is really offensive ended once you get there. Now, defensive ended, it's just a 3 out of 5. The same thing I was trying to talk about the speed of the deck. You do have to get to that 4 energy before you can really throw down anything that's going to help keep you in the game. And you don't have a ton of raid targets that are going to save you in life. And then the green color trigger is a little tough to manage sometimes because you're going to want to have those 2 drops on the board. So if you ever do hit a color trigger, in most cases, you're holding on to 4, 5, 6, and 7s. So you're not able to really get that color trigger off a lot, but the color trigger is needed in the deck if it ever does happen for you. But once you do get your bodies out, they're all going to be 4K or higher, and the Leona is going to be a 5K, so that adds into the defense. A deck that can run a 5K is going to be a decently defensive deck, and I think I would have gave that a 0.52, but maybe I wasn't feeling as generous about this deck. I think because this is my favorite, like second favorite deck, and I really love it, and it's going to be one I play the most. Maybe I was trying to hold myself back a little bit from, boosting it up and not trying to be too biased about it. I did give the consistency a 4 out of 5 because I do think that, even if you don't see the Leona, you are seeing a lot of other 4K bodies, and the deck kind of gets there pretty good because all these captains are just good cards. They're all consistent cards. You have early bodies that you could play down. You have, you just it just feels like a because you're going through a play like you're trying to get to the Leona. There's not a lot of things stopping you from getting to this game plan, right? It really just you as the pilot. Like the deck is consistent in doing it. You have plenty of double energy generators. You have 12 in the deck. You have a lot of ways to do what you're going to do. So the deck is consistent in doing what it wants to do. Now, if that consistency, pertains into how often you're going to win, I'm taking this into the vacuum of like how consistent this deck is at doing what it wants to do, and it does feel very consistent in doing that. With that being said, 4 out of 5 on the removal and utility, because like I said, you have a lot of keywords, even though you do feel like you probably want a little more. You have 4K bodies, 5K bodies, you have damage, you have impacts, you have step, you have all these different keywords to, try to help you out. And you do have consistent, draw and searchability in the deck. So 4 out of 5 stars on the removal slash utility, because I think the kill spell in this deck is actually pretty good too, because you can boost up some of your bodies up to like 8 or 9k, and then the removal spell can actually touch those cards as well. Whereas earlier in the game, you don't feel bad playing the removal spell and just popping a 4k regardless, right? On the extracurriculars, I gave it 4 out of 5 for both skill and fun level. I do think the deck is fun to play, but it maybe would be a lot more fun if it had another raid target. Like a raid, Charlotte, Fogolian, or Yami in this deck would have been so amazing. I think it would have put it like one of the best decks for sure. But like they had to pick the decks that they want to make the most popular and the strongest. And I do think that this one's lacking on a little bit of that, but it is still very fun being able to bring up, a 7 drop, 5k, damage 2, impact 1, boosting somebody by 1,000. That feels really, really good. And the skill is a 4 out of 5 because, like most toolbox decks, I do think the skill for these decks will be a 4 out of 5 because it is really going to be pilot dependent, how you build your deck dependent, and how you read your deck going into the meta, right? So these decks, I think, if you built this deck from the set, just like the Hashira deck or any other toolbox decks, you can go into other, metas and decks really, really well. All right, before I touch on the keynotes, let's see what's going on. I'm looking forward to building the green captain deck, Gregory. Me too. Like I said, Leona is one of my favorite characters in the show. Her and Noelle, big time, and Charlotte. Green captains looks like a lot of fun. It is, and it will be. Is Jack more of a toll of this build? I feel like trying to get to 6 energy just for his 1500 is kind of lackluster. Jared agrees and doesn't run him. Yeah, guys, I definitely think that you don't want to focus on him, right? I think in my list I only put him at a 2 of, because you do want to the value from Jack is, he's a 0 drop that is good late in the game. So a lot of 0 drops later in the game become bricks, right? Because they don't offer you a whole lot. So the value that, Jack brings you is that he can be a 0 drop that is now a 3K later in the game, because you will be at that 6 energy spot, right? And a lot of times he could just be sitting on your back line the whole game until you get to that 6 energy spot. You'll raid with the Marioliona, you'll move her up, and then maybe you can have him out. It's just an added plus to being able to have these 3K bodies constantly swinging into your opponent, which it does feel a little similar to like a Metal Bat, in the sense where Metal Bat definitely does a better job of playing like the 4K bodies out. But this deck can press a lot of 3Ks, and I think that Jack is good in the deck, and I think I said I'll check my list. I think I have him at a 2 or 3 of at the moment in my particular list. Let's see. Yeah, I have Jack at a 2 of, because there is a card in this set which is Charmy, and she says when played, choose up to one other character on your field, and it gains 1,000 BP until the end of the turn. And you really have to max out on that Charmy, because you have to do that because of the Yamis and stuff like that. Because there's a Yami that you run in the deck, and he will come out, and you can reduce him by 1. Uh, and you get to do all kinds of shenanigans, because if one of your characters has a higher base BP, you can reduce his cost by 1, which is really, really good. And I just think that the Charmy gives these characters that are maybe lacking that extra 1,000, because a lot of them are 3Ks, right? The Dorothy, the Marioliona, the Real are all 3Ks. And the Charmy, I think, is the most important um, card for you to run in the deck as a 0 drop. In my opinion, obviously, because the Marioliona is there too, I think that the Charmy is the one that I mainly focused on. Just to give you guys some input. Matt C, 0 drop, active trigger that can be a 3K that you can boost. It's pretty good option for a 0 cost. I agree, Matt. I do think, like they are saying, the Jack is pretty divisive. I do think that it is good enough to include in the deck, though, but I don't think it should be a main focus, right? I do think that the Charmy, you guys will have to try the Charmy out. Let me know what y'all think about it. I do think that she is really important, because just like the Jack, she is an active trigger, but when you play her down, you are getting a lot of value out of her, because now you're able to push those 3Ks as 4Ks, and then now you're able to, put your Fulgolian online a little bit easier. Say you played out a Fulgolian earlier, and now this following turn, you don't have another way to boost him. The Charmy gives you a little bit better of a way to boost the Fulgolian, so that way it's at the 5K to get the impact. And then that also pertains into being able to play that Yami out for that reduced 1,000 cost, which is pretty good. Charmy all the way. Everyone loves Charmy. Yes, I'm glad we're all Charmy praisers. Not a captain, but maybe could be, right? I'll go through the keynotes before we move on this one. Jack of all trades, master of none. Since we were just talking about Jack, the deck does a lot of good things, but not anything, outstanding or amazing, right? It plays a lot of strong cards. So missing on Miss Mario Leona Vermilion doesn't feel bad, right? Like, you can do decent things in the game even before you get to the point of Mario Leona, because you do just run so many strong, decent bodies, and you do have a lot of triggers in the deck. If you high roll your energy and you have a good hand, it is a top tier deck. I do believe that if you do see this and you're able to go to the Marioliona on turn 3, you are going to put the pressure on your opponent for sure, because now they're going to try to deal with these 4K, 5K bodies, because Marioliona is going to boost them up. Once per turn, you get to do that and pick who you want to boost. So if you do high roll, with this deck and you do that, it's going to feel really bad for your opponent. Maybe not as bad as if you do get high rolled by Suzaku, because Suzaku does just clear bodies, whereas this deck really boost all your bodies up and make them a little bit stronger, getting in multiple attacks, and your opponent's going to have to block them out. Whereas Suzaku high roll, just clearing a body, I think is definitely a little bit stronger. One note to say as well, I do think this deck is still missing something, right? I put a note here. It doesn't have double blocker. It doesn't have snipe. It doesn't have a lot of keywords that you would hope that a toolbox deck has, right? I think that instead of trying to play around giving the deck a lot of keywords, they try to boost the deck with triggers, right? Like in my deck, I have 44 triggers in it at the moment, which is really, really good. And I think that the only reason it's not higher is because I am prioritizing that double energy Dorothy and the double energy Marioliona, because I think they are really, really important cards. But if you wanted to take those to lower counts, you could maybe put some other stuff up. But I do think that these green build 'em up decks like this, you do want to be as consistent as possible. But I do think the deck is missing something. And a Charlotte raid or one of the captain raids being a 4 or 5, even the Yami, like I wouldn't have been mad if the Yami was a raid, right? Even being a 5 cost, something like that. I think the deck is missing just a little bit of something. Charm me all the way. Honestly, thinking of running the Julius instead of the Yami color trigger, I think it helps find the Mario Leona faster. I do agree with you on that point. I was trying to run that too, but I do feel like um the Mario Leona and the Bill do help the consistency of the deck, and you do have the event, but you're not finished yet, right? Which will let you draw a card and then make the characters active. And I do really play highly into that card. I think it's very important in the deck. So you are getting draw power from that card. You're able to, play a character, play that card, boost it up, draw a card, and stand that card up. So it is giving you some consistency there, and you do have a decent amount of draw triggers with the Charlotte being a draw trigger. I just think the Yami just fits a little bit more into what I think the deck is trying to do, which is get to some kind of late game state, right? I do think that the Julius probably would make it a little more consistent and keep the energy more consistent, but would make the payoff of the deck, which is, getting to a higher end of the game. And I think the Yami helps you, close those games out a little bit better. But I think that you could do like a 2-2 split, 2 Yamis, 2 Juliuses. I think something along the lines of there probably wouldn't be a bad split, to be completely honest. All right, that is the Green Captain Toolbox. What do you guys think is next, right? That's what, 4 decks we've been through now? All right, let's see. For anyone that is just joining us, we'll go through them again real quick since we are getting down there. The Red Black Bulls did get a 21.5 out of 25, being in first place. The green 3-cost Asta and Unit Rush deck got a 19.5 out of 25. This is probably the most surprising grade that I gave out here. And it actually gave me a hard time too, because I had to move these around and I had to figure out how to move these things. Because when I got done with this deck, I had it at the bot, like near the bottom, and then I had to move it up to second place. So this will probably be the one I catch the most flack on. In third place, we do have the 3 Ladies in Red with 18.5 out of 25 of the Gold Star ratings. A really strong deck in its own right. We just went over the Green Captain Toolbox deck as the 4th deck, and that means, yes, if we've already went through those 2 colors, the last 2 decks in here on my deck rating for these is going to be the purple decks. Now, I don't think that any of these decks are bad decks. I want that to be very, very clear. I am not to the thought and process that you can't play a certain deck in Union Arena, right? Just to make that very clear, I think almost every deck in Union Arena is a viable deck, and you do have ways to play it. But I am just trying to give a grading system, and I do not think that this means that this deck is bad. Like I said, a deck would have to be under 15, I think, on this rating system for me to consider it bad. But the 5th ranked deck that I have coming out of this set is the Purple Dark Triad deck. I did give it a 16.5 out of 25 stars. But I am a believer in this deck. To be very, very clear, I think that this is a good deck and it can do some really cool things. But I gave it a 3 out of 5 on the speed. To be completely honest, the speed of the deck, it does have 2 raid targets, right? So I was thinking about giving it a 4 out of 5, but those raid targets don't actually clear bodies off, right? Those bodies come out, they reduce your opponent's stuff or they give you value, so they're not really like meant to end the game, even though your opponent is going to probably have to block these 4Ks and then, have to deal with that. But I don't think the speed of the deck is like super fast, mainly because the Vanica also costs you 2 action points, but because she does filter your deck, so I gave the deck a 3 out of 5 on speed and a 3 out of 5 on offense. Mainly because you do have 2 different raid targets. The deck is, consistently, it's a good, solid Union Arena deck. You got 8 raid targets. You have a couple characters that cost you 2. I think that in the terms of speed and offensive power, this deck does very fair Union Arena trading card game things, and it's not to be taken lightly because that is good, right? I think there's just some decks that are really, really fast and strong. And at the moment, we are in kind of a meta, if you go based off of like toppings in the Union Arena kind of like competitive scene, where like fast, speed heavy offensive decks are definitely at the moment doing really, really well. Now for defense, I did give it a, 3.5 stars out of 5. I think that this one, I was trying to give it the straight 4 out of 5 stars. The reason I didn't is because there's not a lot of ways to kill bodies on the board, outside of like reducing the BP of the characters. But that is also a really good thing because this Dante comes down, you get to reduce 2 different characters by 1,000 until the end of your opponent's turn. Now that is really, really strong because now when they go to, say you pick both of the raid cards, now those raid cards are going to be essentially useless for those 2 cards. 2 cards on their front line are going to have less BP than your Dante and your Xenon, right? So now that means you're going to win in terms of bodies, being able to block them out. And I think that that is definitely one of the things that this deck shines on doing is being able to put the Xenon and the Dante out, be able to block out those big bodies, and then you really want to keep your Vanica in the back so that way you block out with your other 0 drops and get value off of them. It's going to be Dante, Xenon, blocking big bodies, little bodies that you want to die, let them die to get value off of them. And that is kind of like the way this deck plays and does cool things. And it also has an alternate win con, which we'll get to separately. Consistency, a 3 out of 5. I think it is a consistent deck. You have multiple raid targets. You have, an alternate win con. You have a lot of draw and trashing effects. And to be honest, if you've ever played Muzan or kind of Nanami a little bit, this deck kind of feels that way in the way that in Muzan you're wanting some of those little bodies to die. Well, this deck kind of plays the exact same way, with those little bodies being your big consistency pieces. But if you don't see those bodies and you're having to kind of hard play some of your other characters, it feels a little slower and not as consistent. So that is where it's just a solid deck, right? Like 3 out of 5 stars is good. I want to be very clear about that. The removal and utility, I think, is a 3 out of 5 as well. Not having a ton of ways to just straight up, clear some bodies off the board, but being able to make it where your opponent can't block with 3,000 PP or less, the Xenon, and then being able to, recover bodies with the Vanica. The removal utility, it does a lot of everything. And to be honest, I probably could have gave it another half point here in the removal utility because you can also just use the Dante if they have a 1K body out, pop both the 1K bodies, right? That is also something that you can do. It may not come up very often, but I do think that it is a really solid removal utility deck, being able to draw cards, trash cards, do all kinds of shenanigans. I did give the skill and the fun level both 4 out of 5 gold stars. I think that the skill is, a 4 out of 5 in the sense that you have to manage what little bodies you want to get sidelined, and then how many of those do you want to get rid of that will make it where you can't like raid, right? Because you don't want to get rid of too many. And I think that it's definitely the play to keep the Vanica on the back line. Just from what I've read into the deck a little bit, with the tree of the Clefault, you want to have all 3 of them out to be able to end the game on that alternate win con. So there is a lot of ways to like pick who you block with the big guys, what character you're going to play back out, what characters you give the minus BP to. And I think it is a very skill intensive deck, but there is a benefit to these decks, right? If a deck is really skill intensive, then that means there's a lot of payoff for it. And I think that a really good pilot who takes time with this deck, who puts a lot of effort into it, learns their plays, learns what they have to do against the meta, can do really well into certain decks if they take the time to practice it, right? And I think it's just a really fun deck. Having an alternate win con is really cool. I think that that alone could have almost made it 5 stars. I'll probably go back and change that. I'll probably give it 5 because alternate win cons are pretty dope. All right, going into the keynotes. If you guys don't have any comments to say about this deck, new win con is strong but inconsistent. Maybe not as inconsistent as I initially thought. Talking to one of my buddies who already has the deck built and who's been doing some play testing, it seemed like I guess he was getting it out of like 3 out of 5 games or 2 out of 5 games. I think is what he said. I could be wrong either way, but looking at a 30% chance in a game to get a win con, it's pretty good. That's pretty good considering the deck can still win games. One of the other notes here on the thing, the normal way, right? The win con is consistent, but if you don't see that win con, you can still just win games by having really good characters of the Dante and the Xenon to push your opponent, keep your opponent from killing you, and you can do those things. The defense of the deck comes from sacking your bodies for their effects. I think that is what makes the deck a little bit slower because you're not really not going to block with those bodies, right? If you feel like you're in an instance where you can use those little bodies to swing and not block and take life, you that takes where the skill of the deck comes in, right? Because you're going to have to determine that based off of what the game is going on. But the defense for the deck comes out from so many little bodies that you do get to play because you're going to run 16 zeros. You're going to run a lot of ones. There's really not a lot of cards. It's interesting that Dante's a 5. To be completely honest, I really wish that they did not make the Dante a 5 energy, and that would skyrocket this deck to be really strong. And maybe that's why they didn't do it because they thought the alternate win con. Maybe they wanted to be, a little reserved about that. But if Dante was just a 4 energy, that would put this deck from like a 16.5 to a 18.5 almost immediately, because being able to have to stay on that 5 energy does hurt the deck a little bit, and probably for a good reason, right? Because Dante lets you put the top 2 cards of your deck into your sideline. It helps cycle into it, so it makes sense. A lot of your games in this deck, I know a lot of people. I'm not one of these people. I do think that Union Arena is a skill intensive deck. Does life come into play in a lot of games? Yes, but I do believe there's a lot of ways to play around what certain life triggers you'll see, because you need to be mindful of which ones that you could see that could hurt you the most. You need to play around those specific ones, and it usually helps you out. And that's how you show skill in this game. But your life triggers in this deck will matter a lot because you do want your opponent to hit a lot of those draw triggers and for you to be able to get these raids out for free, which will help you a lot. You do have a lot of triggers in this deck. The last note is lower bodies, but not a lot of ways to clear them, which is what I was saying about the removal. You have a lot of ways to reduce the BP of your opponent's characters, but not a lot of ways to get them off the board. I do think that this is a very solid, cool deck, and I do look forward to seeing, my buddy or some other people cooking with this deck and, popping up into some toppings, right? Just because this deck is, one of these, it's in 5th place of my ratings doesn't mean I think it's a bad deck. I think that all the decks in the set are really good. 112. All right, getting into the last deck, and yes, the deck that I gave the worst rating, but not by very much, is the Purple Black Bulls deck. But it is a 16 out of 25, right? So that means it is a solid deck. There's nothing wrong with this deck. I don't think the deck does anything, crazy amazing. I think it's a consistent, good Union Arena deck, and that's why I gave it a 16 out of 25. If you wanted to build one deck from this set that is really fun and you wanted to just play with all the characters, I do think you could still build this deck. Maybe win your locals with it. It's not a bad deck. Don't let the 16 out of 25, steer you the wrong way and make you think that this is not a good deck, right? This is a good, solid deck, and here's why. The speed is a 4 out of 5. This is the main thing about this deck that makes it really, really good. And I wish that I could have given it a 5 out of 5, but I could not do that based off of this Yami costing you 2 action points to play, which is a little unfortunate. 4 out of 5 because the Asta is just a 4 cost raid target, so it does speed the deck up a little bit in that. But this deck also plays out other characters and bodies to the board because you're able to swarm some bodies out. And this deck plays a lot like Toto from JJK, the purple Jujutsu High deck. This deck plays very similarly to that specific deck in the sense that, you're gonna play out bodies, you get more value based off of those Black Bull bodies you have on the board, and that is how you win the game. So the speed is a 4 to 5 up because you're going to keep playing some bodies out, which is pretty good. And then when they get rid of your Asta, you're able to, play one of the raid sources from him out. So you have a lot of recursion in the deck. The offense just a 3 out of 5 because, like I said, you do have a instant of impact, but you don't have a ton of ways to really boost characters outside of your Yami and your Black Bull's hideout. I feel like damage 2 on the Yami is probably what the deck really needed. Something to try to like help give it that extra where you feel like you're just doing a lot of normal offensive things, nothing out of the extraordinary. I do think that the luck coming down and being able to get played out active does help a little bit with it. But with all that said, it only has the one raid Asta, and if the luck or the Yami could have been, one cost or raid target or something like that, it would have put this deck at a really fast deck. But then the deck probably would have been really nasty because now you're swarming out little bodies in raiding. So they probably were trying to keep it balanced and fair. And that is why the defense is a 3 out of 5 because you don't have a lot of crazy raid triggers in life that you want to see because the Yami's an active trigger. And I think that the luck was a draw trigger. I could look it up real quick on my deck list. I have them all pulled up. The luck is a draw trigger, right? Yeah. So you don't get to actually add the luck to your hand as well, which I think hurts the deck a little bit too. But still a solid deck because you can just put out these 3,500 4K bodies and then block out through your opponent. It's a consistent deck, 3 out of 5. Like you can see here, everything is a 3 out of 5 outside of that speed. You are going to draw a lot of cards because you're in purple. You do have a lot of triggers. You're going to see a lot of your Black Bull cards. Now, being able to see this Asta, the raid Asta, is the main thing. You can search it with the searcher from the deck, but it's just not like crazy consistent. You're going to do the things that you normally do, but I do think that one more raid card would have just almost made all of these stats in this deck go up a little higher, or if the Yami just was 1 action point instead of 2. The removal and utility is a 3 out of 5. Your kill spell isn't the best kill spell in the game, but it does work. You do have the impact on your Asta, which is really, really good. And then, the utility of the Asta, making your opponent not be able to stop that impact is probably the main thing that this deck does so well. If you ever get your opponent down to 1 life, you know that you're going to win the game outside of that being a final trigger because the Asta guarantees that his impact is going to get through as long as you have 4 or more Black Bulls because he negates your opponent's impact negate, which is really, really cool and does fit in kind of the theme of what Asta does kind of in the show, negating other people's magic. So he swings in and he makes sure that he is able to close that game out for sure. But decent removal utility because, like, going into the utility a little bit, you do get to play characters out. You are going to draw cards and you are going to search. You're going to be able to boost, one of your Black Bulls through the Yami and the Black Bull's hideout. So it does a little bit of everything. The skill and the fun level, 3 out of 5. Nothing crazy going on in this deck outside of having to manage the number of Black Bulls you have on the board. And it can just be, other Black Bulls, but most of the card says like more other cards, right? So you have to have your card and then that many other numbers on the board, which does, take up space on the board, especially when you're trying to get to 6 for the Yami, which kind of feels like a lot. If the Asa had been a 3 and the Yami been a 5, I think the deck would have felt a lot better too. And it is just fun deck because you get to play with all the Black Bulls. Depending on how much you love this show, that could up the level up to a 5. Just like me, I love Marioliona and I love Noel, and Mimosa. So those being, the ones I put most fun in. But I do love Yami, and it just hurts a little bit that, it's not stronger deck. I guess that's all I have to say. Key notes before I get into the comments, if you guys have any, please let me know what y'all think about these gradings and the cards in this deck. The deck has the ability to swarm, but it takes some setup. You're not just swarming for free. You're able to swarm based off of playing your characters to get other characters out, so it's not as straightforward as you would think. Your hand can't keep up with the amount of bodies you want to play out. I left a note here because this is actually a comment I left on the last deck that ranked the bottom here from the SAO deck. The green, it was either the green or the blue deck from the SAO. It feels like you're trying to play stuff out, and you're losing cards from your hand that you're not maybe as replacing as easy. I do think that the deck needs another raid card, and it is just fair Union Arena. In that instance, it is maybe a little too fair, right? A lot of the things that it's doing, I think that they were scared of the Asta having that negate the impact, being able to be such a clutch game closer. And then I really don't know why. I feel like this deck is the one out of the set that I feel like they were intentionally trying to like take some things away from. I don't know if anyone else got that sense of this too, but I do feel like this deck could have been a lot better. And it is still a solid deck, but it's just too fair. It's too much of fair union, and that's why like you're gonna have to work hard to win with this deck. Like your games are gonna be close. I don't think there's gonna be a lot of games that you're gonna just sweep your opponent unless like they start off slow. In that instant, this deck would definitely close out the game because you're going to be swarming them with the low bodies and then have your Asta to finish out with the impacts. All right, what you guys saying about this? I think the Henry you get out of the starter is very much needed for this Black Bulls purple deck. I think so too. He is pretty good. I think in my list, I only have him at a 2 of the Henry. And even my first list, I didn't have him at any in the deck. I'm not sure why. I think I just valued the Zora a little bit more. I know the Zora doesn't have a trigger, but the Zora is one of the few bodies that is a low body that you could try to play out early and just push your opponent with the 3500. And I think that I went with the Zora over the Henry in that instance, mainly because I do think that the Yami and the Luck are the big stars of the show outside of the Asta, and I wanted another character to kind of push the pace of the game. And the Zora really is the only one that does that. And the Zora is just a unique card, making your opponent, if they activate a main ability, it gives you draw to your hand. Vanessa should have only cost 1 AP. Yes, preach. I do think that this deck is in a fine line of them wanting to make the cards good, but also being too fair, right? Like the Vanessa is a 2 action point card, right? But she doesn't have a trigger. I understand why she costs 2, but also give her a trigger so that way you don't feel bad about putting in more copies of her in the deck. In my list, I'll only run 2 of her for that fact alone because I only have 42 triggers in the deck, and it's because the Zora is no trigger, my Vanessa is no trigger. If you play the Magna Swing, which is one of the best early cards you could play in the deck, he doesn't have a trigger. Finral doesn't have a trigger. There's so many other cards. I think the Vanessa, if anything, they could have made her 4 energy 2 action point and gave her a trigger. Then that feels a little bit better too. But the fact that she doesn't have a trigger, I think, is what makes her hurt a little bit more because you don't want to run her at a 4 of in the deck, right? Like you do want to run her as a 4 of. Let me clarify. You want to run her as a 4 of, but I feel like in most instances you cannot because she costs 2 action points and she doesn't have a trigger. But that is the purple Black Bull. 16 out of 25 is what I the deck. It is, I think one of the weaker decks, but I think all these decks are really good decks that you can play in the game at the moment, right? They're all good, strong decks. They're all very, very fun. I do think that the Red Black Bulls is definitely the best deck in the set. I don't want that to be misunderstood. I'm trying to be fair on these gradings, but also say that none of these decks are bad. None of these decks are absolutely bad, but the best deck is definitely that Red Black Bulls deck, and it is one that you're going to see in a lot of your local tournaments because people are going to want to play with this Asta because it is so absolutely strong. My 2 favorite decks are the 3 Ladies in Red and Green Captain decks. I can't wait to play these more often. We're going to get some more boxes at the shop, so I'll be able to fully build them out. But please let me know what you guys think about these gradings in the comment of the video. I will edit this video to post all the ones that we've gone over in their own separate categories, but let's just go down the list one more time for anyone showing up late. Red Black Bulls, 21.5 out of 25 stars. The green Yuna and Osto 3-cost rush deck, 19.5 out of 25 stars. Definitely the most surprising grading I gave in this set. I did not think that I would give this deck such a high grading, but I'm very surprised, and I think that it's mainly because the deck is so fast and aggressive. Three Ladies in Red, the event value deck, 18.5 out of 25 gold stars. A very strong deck with a lot of payoff. The Green Captain Toolbox Mario Leona deck, I gave 18 out of 25 gold stars. Really solid deck. And we are definitely dropping off in the gradings that I've given these purple decks. The Purple Dark Triad deck, 16.5 out of 25 stars. I do think that win con is a very serious thing that you need to watch out for, and the deck is probably a little more consistent than most people are going to think. And then 16 out of 25 for the Purple Black Bulls deck. Once again, I do think that this is a solid Union Arena deck, but I feel like they just wanted to keep it down a little bit. That is going to be this video and live stream. I will work on making this into individual videos for everyone to look at, so that way if you're only interested in one, you don't have to watch me, do it all for all these other things. But I appreciate everyone hanging out to me today. Please go and leave the channel subscribe, like the video for me. Joey just showed up. Purple Black Bulls, you mean Metal Bat for beginners? Oh man. That is a statement for sure, Joey. Metal Bat for beginners. I can see that. But thanks for showing up at the end, Joey. Thanks, Gregory. I appreciate it a lot. Thanks for everyone hanging out with me today. I'll get these videos made up and diced into nice, cool little things. I appreciate everyone's comments and feedback on the video. Peace.